This is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime, and I'm passionate about helping women use their untapped skills, resources, and talents to create their ideal work and lifestyle, making a difference in their second half. Well, our episode today was recorded before we started going through this time of crisis, the sequestration, and the virus that has hit really our whole world. And the topic is running a family-owned business, where I interview Frank Fabela. And I felt like it was very relevant to still air this podcast because the principles that are in this episode will really help you navigate the next months and maybe the next years, especially in family-owned businesses, other businesses as well, but where the children, maybe they've lost a parent or someone special to them, and all of a sudden they are left with a business or even handling a trust. The principles in this episode will really help you navigate through some of that. And I felt very, very relevant for today and for the coming months and years. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Frank Fabela. So let's get right to it. Frank Fabela, it is so great to have you in studio today for this episode on family businesses.
My pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's just so great. You have quite a background, and what you're doing now as a Vistage, a leader, a Vistage chair with multiple groups. But you go back to where I had interviewed you for a book when you were coming off of being an engineer. And with all of the...
That's right.
Yes, you have a great deal of experience. But we are talking today about family businesses, and you have also worked in family businesses. So just tell a little bit for our listeners what your background is in not only in your engineering area, but in working into some of those businesses.
Well, my background, thanks, Debbie. My background has been in engineering early on in my career, and I worked for manufacturers for quite some time, leading engineering groups, and then I ended up doing consulting, and I had my own engineering business for a while, and I after being exposed to a CEO peer group when I was leading an organization, I understood the value of bringing business leaders, CEOs, general managers together and helping them on a regular basis to be effective. So eventually I became a Vistage chair, where now I lead private advisory boards for business owners and CEOs. And at the beginning of all that, I had experience doing consulting for some family businesses, working for family businesses. And so I really understand what goes on behind the curtain.
Yes.
And now that I lead Vistage groups, basically what I do is I facilitate peer advisory boards that meet monthly. And then I meet monthly with each of my members of these groups to provide some coaching for them. So I get a real deep inside look into their businesses.
And I love it. I love the fact that you've been on both sides of the fence, because you've been actually working for them and seeing some of the conflicts. And I don't know if you can share a couple of those things as we go along, but yeah.
Yeah, so the thing about family businesses, you're interested in my family business experience.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about family businesses is family businesses have all the same challenges as any other business, with the added challenges of the fact that you've got very, very important relationships that you want to preserve, you want to enhance, and oftentimes the conflicts within an organization hurt those relationships. So my interest has been in helping family businesses to run effective businesses and yet do so preserving all the benefits of a marriage and not let that blow up, and sibling relationships and all of that, that are so important to us. It's too easy to let those take a hit and get hurt.
Definitely. And I would think also, if you're talking about siblings, there's competition. There's maybe a desperation there to, get through some of the problems. Could be some financial problems in there.
Two examples that I think I refer to a lot in my mind as I think through the challenges of a family business and where I can see value for having a board is where you have a husband and wife typically working together in a business, and they might not always share the same perspectives on how things ought to get done, but ultimately one of them is going to be the decision maker to the rest of the organization. And so it's important to get some opportunity for both the spouses to work through their challenges, difficulties, differences. And one of the examples that I've experienced that was one of the worst challenges I've ever seen was where family business was a father and a couple sons who were running a business. The father was at the point where he basically retired and the sons were running the business. Mm-hmm. And they were in such great conflict. They were in an impasse and couldn't get anywhere on anything. Mm. And so we started a board for them. Mm. And I saw that to be a means of moving things forward.
Oh, that's so great. And because I've been president of a nonprofit, as you know, how is... you've just given us a glimpse how it's a little bit different with a family-owned business with that type of board, with maybe another nonprofit type of board. I think there's those personal relationships. Are there any other things that are a little bit different in a family-owned business board?
Well, yeah. There's many different types of boards. There's corporate boards for, let's say, for-profit businesses, larger publicly traded businesses. Those serve a fiduciary responsibility. That's a specific role for board members of organizations like that. Nonprofit boards, basically a nonprofit board, people are coming together with a common interest. Mm-hmm. And that common interest is more important than the relationships actually within the board, among the board members. And what I really see as a low-hanging fruit opportunity for family-owned businesses is to have a board that would enable the family members to resolve their challenges effectively and preserve their relationship in its fullness.
Okay, that's quite involved in doing some of that. So, and you are able then to kind of mediate that and have a specific interest in that, and with all of the experience that you have as well. So, what is the difference here? We're talking about a family-owned business board, but like an advisory board how is that different than even on a board of directors or a family-owned? Can you define that for us?
Yeah. Here? So a board of advisors is really a non-binding board. What it is, we call it a board, but it's just a group that's getting together to help make good decisions. So decision making is the key aspect of leaders, and to make good decisions, it's best to have a diverse input, to have lots of perspective, and so that's why we would recommend having an advisory board. It doesn't have to be binding upon any decisions. Ultimately, let's say you have a CEO and an advisory board. The advisory board can help the CEO of the organization understand the issues better, make a good decision, but it's still up to the CEO or the owner, let's say, to decide ultimately. Right. But they don't do it in a vacuum. They do it with the wisdom of many people around them.
Right, right. So I've had a little tiny taste of this working through my parents' trust and working with my sisters, and we don't have an official board, but we've brought people around us, to advise us. But there's, that emotion, and we've gotten through it. We're getting along still. We're doing great. But there's been a couple moments of, different perspectives here. Where one sister will see something as the golden egg, and then the other one's going, okay, so that's a bucket load of work. That's not, this was dropped in our lap. Uh-huh. So, you have that different perspective and to be able to work through that. So being able to have some of those different perspectives, I would see, is really important.
Yeah, so that's exactly why I'll go back to the board that... where the father and the two sons were running a business, and the sons they saw the world so differently, okay? They couldn't come to terms on almost anything.
Wow.
And so the resolution was, rather than be in an impasse all the time, to get them together with people that they each respected. So if we, say, had three or four other people whom they all respected. Mm-hmm. Then when you're meeting together and one person says, it looks blue, one brother says it looks blue, and the other brother says, no, it looks red, and you have four other advisors that say, no, this one's a blue one, right?
Wow.
This is blue.
Yeah.
And the one who says it's red has to just accept.
Yes.
They're not seeing things the way that, that it really is. And and then vice versa. So it doesn't mean that the board's always going to side with one person or the other. It's just that you're getting perspective. And when you can't get along with, let's say, your spouse or your sibling to make good decisions, you can balance that against other people who can be more objective, let's say.
I would think the working with a spouse, especially, that would be quite interesting, because my husband and how we're different, and he's the type B, I'm the type A, but he sees things differently than I see. I'm the go-getter. It's like, why aren't we getting on these things right away? And he thinks through the process, and actually, it's so valuable. He's been a great input in my life. But yes, I can see how that's. Especially in running a business. Yeah,
that's a great example too, because in a marital relationship, you often have a complementary skills from each person, and so there is often quite vast differences in the perspectives.
Right.
And it's not that one is any more right than the other, but ultimately a decision has to be made and has to be pushed down through the organization.
Right.
And so what I've seen is. If you only have one person at the top making the decisions, how does the spouse, and let's just say this, if this is a family-owned business, then the spouse technically has 50% ownership, right?
Yes.
So how does that other person who has 50% ownership and an interest in the outcome get their opinion expressed? Where does it happen? So let's say your spouse is working in the organization in a role below you,
right? And
that it had some really good opinions to express that should be heard. My recommendation is that you have a board where the two of you and others can sort that out, and then you can push it down through the organization. But that person has an outlet in that case.
Yes, I would see that as really important, especially if you're working with strong personalities, and how do you may have a spouse then that just doesn't even want to speak up, but because they don't speak up, stuff can go really, really wrong because they're seeing something that's an insight that's very important.
Well, you need to have some order in an organization, so you don't want somebody at the top saying, we're going to go in this one direction, and then somebody down the line say, no, we're going to have to change that.
Yeah.
Okay, so people might have opinions that they have to change it, and if they are reporting to you, they don't get to make that decision.
Yeah.
You want to listen to your people that work for you, but they don't get to make that decision.
Right.
But when you have, let's say, your spouse, and they suggest that you need to go in a different direction, the question is, how do you let that surface up?
Right,
and
right.
I don't think it's a good idea to set a practice where people further down in the chain are able to bring that kind of decision making. It needs to happen at the top.
At the top. Okay. Is that what you're talking about with this unity of command?
Yeah. So
that's another term I wasn't as familiar with. So I want you to explain that so I understand.
So I had a case where I was recommending to a family business owner that they ought to establish a board, and somebody countered that and told them, no, if you have a board and the board makes a decision as opposed to just let's say the husband who's running the business making the decision, then the person that he's dictating to, let's say operations officer, chief operations officer, or someone at that level, would be hearing not just from their CEO, but be hearing from the board. And so now they've got two masters they have to serve, and you can't serve two masters.
Right.
My argument to that is the COO is not taking direction from the CEO and the board. The board is meeting and helping the CEO get to a resolution, and then whatever the CEO says coming out of that board meeting is the command that the COO has to act upon. It's not the board. The board can say let's go right, and the CEO after hearing everybody decides he wants to go left. The COO still has to answer to the CEO.
To the CEO.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's just you're
not setting the board up as an alternative to the CEO.
Yes.
The board's resolutions, if you will, all come and flow through the CEO, and so they're still flowing down a single command to the people down the chain.
Okay.
It was argued that having a board would make that COO have to answer to the CEO and the board, but that's not good practice. It's not good practice to have anybody answer to more than one person.
Yes. Now, when you work with those people, you make sure that unity of command is set up properly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you need to have open communication. You should have open communication.
Right.
Anybody to talk to anybody. Sometimes that gets too restrictive, and people don't want to talk to somebody in a different a different functional area, for instance. But I don't think that's good practice.
Right.
Ultimately, they have to answer to their one and only boss, and they have to have a unity of command that way. So you have one boss.
Okay.
But as long as you have, let's say, the ultimate decisions from the board that come out through the CEO, you have unity of command. You don't violate that.
Right. It's almost like a military term that you've still got that, that main commander, and they're going to take the brunt if things go wrong. They're going to go down with the ship, basically.
Yeah.
So they're ultimately responsible, but they're going to hear from their team then. So, is there an illustration that you had to put all of that back together? I know this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but it's where there was. How do you negotiate that a little bit and to make sure that's going to happen? And are people pretty willing? Do they get so desperate to the point of like nothing's happening that they will? Or with a family, there's so many emotions involved. I would think that would be very difficult sometimes to even put that in place if it's always been done a certain way.
To put a board in place?
A board in place, or even the unity and command like that.
Well, normally there is unity of command by default. And usually somebody is clearly the one who's designated as, let's say, the president or CEO, somebody who's in charge.
Okay.
And the problem is when you have, let's say, family members who are not designated CEO or president, but they still work in the organization and they're a very important contributor.
Yes.
And so that's the challenge, is how do you take that very important contribution to somebody who's active in the organization and utilize that to the benefit of the organization while you preserve the relationships. And so if you have a board that they can meet within and hash out and let all the dirt fly in a board meeting, right?
Yes.
Then you can resolve what you need to do, resolve what decisions are going to be made, let that ultimate CEO or president, whoever's the head person in the organization, flow that information from the board out to the rest of the organization, and it's very clear. But you help that person not to have missteps in their execution. Because they didn't have adequate information, they didn't have enough perspective.
Yes.
And the board is there to enlighten them in ways that they might not have otherwise seen as they try to make a good decision on something.
Yeah, and that comes in with accountability as well, and how it helps the missteps, but also in follow-up, I would think, it's almost like a regular, another nonprofit board, the more, or even church groups. You've been on elder boards as well. So when you are definitely, you've got your involvement there with, working side by side, you have a vested interest in this, going well.
Well, in anything, I'm a firm believer, and you know me, Debbie, I'm known as an agitator.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that in order to have a good decision, you have to get all the dissenting opinions out. You have to give people their say. And only when you do that can you really understand that the decision you made is the best decision.
Right.
And so the challenge is, how do you give people the opportunity to have that conflict? You're going to have conflict.
Yes.
In good decision making. So the challenge is, how are you going to encourage good conflict, and yet take all that conflict, boil it down, and in the end take out the good decision that comes out as a result and push that down. So my argument is that needs to happen at the board level, not at the, let's say, executive level or amongst the other workers in the organization. Do it outside in a board, and let the chief decision maker carry that thoughtful decision away from the board meeting and execute that.
Right, and you can put on a united front then that you've worked it out behind your doors and all of that, and go out for lunch and hey, everything's fine and dandy.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yes.
I think you totally need to be behind closed doors.
Yes.
And having tough, brutal conversations in order to really get to the root of the issue to make good decisions.
Yeah.
But not everybody has to understand all of that conflict and be party to that.
Be a party, yes. And in fact, in just even my little microcosm, my sort of illustration with, working with the family trust, there were some very, very tough conversations. And, some ugly stuff comes out at that point. But, getting beyond those and meeting for lunch and just loving each other after, we getting through that. Well, we don't need to share that with everybody else. So,
The term that I like about that describes that is vigorous debate.
Wow. Okay, that's going to be a good one. I love to use in the future.
I think we have example of that, actually, a biblical example when the apostles tried to figure out whether they should allow Gentiles in.
Yeah.
And I think you can look at various translations of it, and you can read into that they had vigorous debate.
Right.
And then they resolved.
This
is going to be this is the truth. This is the way it is.
Yeah. This is the way it is. That's
But it doesn't happen without the vigorous debate.
Yeah, and actually, it's a good process. I think it makes everybody think. We stop thinking at a certain point. Sometimes we just kind of nod our head and go, okay, whatever. But I think the fact that we can, it helps us maybe do a little more research. Okay, so why is this person feeling this way? Let me dig some more. There must be some sort of reason for this. So I think that's a good, and not being afraid to voice your opinion as well.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah.
So I just told someone the other day, I said, because as I pass president now of a nonprofit, I'm on the board still. I'll be rotating off, but I said, I'm usually, I'm very nice about it. But I said, when I feel very strongly about something, somebody's not going to move me very easily. And you'll notice as you look at my record, that's the way it's usually been.
You need a safe place to
You do.
vocalize what you're feeling
Yes.
and make sure you can get that out.
Yes.
And sometimes it helps just to think through things out loud and then have a sounding board. That's what helps us to be better.
Yes. Yes.
But we need that.
Yeah, but I knew when I was president, it was ultimately my responsibility. So I was going to take the flack if anything, went wrong. But I did listen, But again, you can't just get swayed. Everybody's going to have their little different 2 cents. So I try to keep those, at least organized. So
yeah,
I'm sure.
So picture that nonprofit board. What I advocate for family-owned businesses is something like that. In the nonprofit arena, though, you're not really so much concerned about preserving relationships in that.
Right, yeah.
Not like if it was your spouse that you're in business with.
That's totally different, yes.
So you need to be able to vocalize your opinions and hash it out and hear from other people who can help point the direction, go, wait a minute, she's right this time, or no, he's right this time.
Right.
And then when you hear that, hopefully we have the humility to accept that other people are seeing things that we're not.
Yeah, and I think in that situation too, the family situation, you could be in that situation for a very long time. And like you're on a nonprofit board, you're leading that, I'm rotating off. I've left as much great stuff as I can, but now it's their responsibility. I don't need to be, in the ditches anymore with those sort of decisions. So I think there's a mindset there too, where this is not going to be forever, and sometimes family, it feels like probably forever. For a long period of time.
Yeah, and there's nothing more important than preserving the family.
Oh, totally.
I've seen family relationships where siblings no longer talk to each other.
Right.
And that's horrible.
It's very sad when that happens. Definitely very sad.
Especially when it's a result of a business. And business should be something that is a benefit to us, that benefits our families, and not something that tears us apart.
Right. Oh, definitely. It really, really should. So, well, who should lead a board like this? Or do you have an opinion about this with a family-owned business? Or it could be almost anyone? Or
I think the skill in facilitating a board is vital. It doesn't mean that they have to be the most versed in the business that organization is involved in, but I think it's more a functional facilitation that you need in order to be effective.
Right.
So somebody who's trained, somebody who's experienced, and somebody who's a good facilitator.
Oh, that's
more than anything.
Yeah, I can really see the benefit of that. So, well, as we're kind of coming close to a close, but I want you to talk a little bit about Vistage, because this has been a great organization for you to help so many, not only with family businesses, but with others. And if an owner establishes like a board of advisors for their business, would it replace their membership in a Vistage peer advisory group? Explain a little bit of that difference, because there's two different groups here, and I know you lead different groups. So I think that would be just real helpful if anybody had a question about that.
Yeah. So that I'm a really big proponent of CEO peer advisory boards like Vistage. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great opportunity for business owners or CEOs to gain perspective on their business from others.
Okay.
It's not just on their business, though. It's on them as an individual. So what kind of a leader are they showing up as?
Okay.
What ways are they effective and ineffective? And that's where a peer board, a Vistage group, can help them to develop themselves.
Right.
It'll help them develop their businesses as well. We definitely see businesses growing over twice the market rate because their CEOs are in a Vistage group.
Right.
The difference in Vistage groups and family business advisory boards are Vistage groups are for, let's say you've got a husband-wife running a business.
Right.
It's for either the husband or the wife in one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then the husband or the wife in a different one.
Oh, interesting.
Okay? So you want them separate. You want them to be in a safe environment where they're going to hear from their peers about how they're showing up, and it might mean that, hey, look, they need to be maybe they need to be a little more gentle with their spouse, or they need to be a little bit soft in this area, or they need to be a little more, they need to stand up a little more in some area, and be more decisive, when they're dealing with their decisions that affect their spouse, or whatever it may be. So they're getting individual help, and it's going to be help that's related to their business. Obviously, that's the context.
Right.
But it's for each of them as individuals. A family business board really is designed to help them in their relationship as they make important decisions that affect them both, and then drive those down through the organization.
Oh, that's great. And again, here is your unique perspective, because you have been inside, and now you have like 3 different groups. How many groups you've got? Yeah,
I've got 3 groups. I have groups for CEOs, small business owners, and key executives as well. Okay. And I would say you need, or you should have, and make use of boards at several levels. If you have a family-owned business, I would say establish a family business advisory board, and with 3 or 4 other people that you each respect. And then also, I recommend individually, like maybe the husband and the wife would be in Vistage groups, something like that.
Great.
Father, son, whatever it may be.
That's such great advice. And I will put your contact in the show notes and everything. But we can reach you through your Vistage website too, vistage.com. You're a chair, and then Frank Fabela. So you're on LinkedIn, and you're on all the other social media.
Vistage is the world's largest CEO organization.
Right.
So they've got we've got over 23,000 Vistage members worldwide. So you can pretty much find a Vistage group
anywhere that you go. So that's such great. And just to end us, I was so interested that your comment to me was, I guess I just need to write this book. So I am looking forward to your book coming out. It's going to be about pretty much family-owned businesses. Is that correct? Or what's going to be the emphasis?
Well, Debbie, I don't think I told anybody until I told you that I felt to do that, because I was having a conversation with somebody who didn't understand how important it would be to have an advisory board for their family business. This is somebody actually in my mind who is within one of my Vistage groups. And I'm still recommending they get a family business board.
Yes.
So, you let the cat out of the bag. Yeah. Now I have to communicate.
Now you have to do it. You have to do it. Well, I will look forward to that time. We will have you on again, when your book comes out. So, Frank Fabela, thank you so much. I've known you for years. You are a man of integrity, tremendous talent, but also tremendous insight. You've helped a lot of people. You are, and you've given a lot. You've given on some of these boards as well, and being an elder of several churches. So just appreciate what you're doing, and
thank you.
And all of your insight. Hopefully this will really help many today in understanding the differences there too. I know it's been insightful for me. So thank you again for joining us today, Frank. Make sure that you join us next week so many are making changes and transitions at the halftime of life. Next week's topic is 5 key questions to ask at halftime, and actually anytime, as you start to regroup, reinvent, restart. Many that are doing that in today's world and today's society. These are great questions to ask, so you do not want to miss that. So Deborah Johnson here with goalsforyourlife.com, with womenathalftime.com. Please listen, share, and write a review if you feel like doing so. We'd love to hear from you. Till next time. Thank you for joining us on Women at Halftime. Visit goalsforyourlife.com or womenathalftime.com for many more resources, downloads, and programs, or to get in touch with me. I'd love it if you leave me a review and tell your friends. So until next time, this is Deborah Johnson, signing off.